Imagine a country that rose from the ashes of war and poverty to dominate the global stage not just with its technology, but with its music, films, and stories that make the world laugh, cry, and dance. How did South Korea, once one of the poorest nations in the world, become a cultural superpower whose influence reaches every corner of the planet? Over the past few decades, South Korea has given the world more than just electronics and cars. It has gifted us unforgettable moments of culture. Remember when Gangnam Style became the first YouTube video to cross 1 billion views? Or when Squid Game took over Netflix and turned the world into its audience? Even Beast's most viewed video was based on that very show. Add to that the global sensations BTS and Blackpink, Korean dramas that captivate millions, and masterpieces like Parasite that made history by winning the Oscar for Best Picture, the first non-English film ever to do so. None of this happened by accident. This wasn't luck. It was the result of decades of transformation, struggle, and bold vision. The story begins in 1945, when Japan surrendered and Korea was finally freed after decades of colonization. What followed, however, wasn't peace. Korea was divided into two halves, North under Soviet influence and South under American control. What was meant to be a temporary split soon became permanent as the Cold War intensified. In 1950, North Korea invaded the South, triggering a brutal 3-year conflict that left millions dead and South Korea in ruins. At the time, South Korea was among the poorest nations on Earth. Its economy was worse than that of Somalia or Haiti today. Hunger was widespread, democracy was weak, and the country seemed to have no future. In the years that followed, South Korea came under a series of military dictatorships. Leaders like Park Chung-hee ruled with an iron hand. Park pushed rapid industrialization, creating giant family-owned corporations called chaebols, such as Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. These companies helped build the economy, but they also concentrated wealth and power. While the economy boomed, the people's voices were silenced, censorship was strict. Filmmakers had to get government approval for scripts, and movies that criticized society or government were banned. Even foreign songs were outlawed if they were deemed immoral. Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind was among hundreds blacklisted. But beneath the surface of this repression, change was brewing. In 1987, after decades of dictatorship, South Koreans rose up for democracy. And with democracy came freedom, the freedom to create, to question, and to express. Yet it would take a few years before the country realized the true power of culture. In the early 1990s, Hollywood dominated the world. When Jurassic Park became a global phenomenon in 1993, a report by the Korean Presidential Advisory Board compared its box office success to selling 1.5 million Hyundai cars. That moment changed everything. The government realized that culture, music, cinema, and storytelling could be as profitable as manufacturing. That same year, a local film called Seopng, based on traditional Korean storytelling, broke records by selling over 1 million tickets in Seoul alone. It was proof that Korean stories could move Korean hearts and maybe, one day, the world's too. The government started treating culture as an export, just like ships or semiconductors. In 1994, it established the Cultural Industry Bureau. By 1996, restrictive film laws were replaced with the new film promotion law, encouraging creativity instead of controlling it. Major companies like Samsung and Hyundai invested in the movie business, funding big-budget blockbusters like Shiri, Korea's first Hollywood-style action film. It became the highest-grossing film in Korean history at the time, even beating Titanic at the domestic box office. For the first time, South Koreans were watching their own stories with pride. Then came the 1997 Asian financial crisis, which hit Korea hard. The country had to borrow billions from the IMF, and the powerful chaebols were blamed for corruption and greed. But even in this dark time, opportunity emerged. Newly elected President Kim Dae-jung saw culture as a tool for national recovery. He believed movies, music, and art could rebuild both the economy and Korea's image abroad. Known as the culture president, Kim invested millions into the creative sector. He created laws to promote cultural industries, funded pop music and film schools, and built massive performance spaces. He also launched the Digital Korea Initiative. By 2004, almost every household in South Korea had broadband internet, making it the most connected country on Earth long before the rest of the world caught up. This digital revolution set the stage for YouTube, Netflix, and K-pop to explode later. Most importantly, Kim ended the era of censorship. Artists were free to tell the truth about their society, their struggles, inequalities, and dreams. This freedom gave birth to films like Parasite, which brutally yet beautifully portray the divide between rich and poor. Instead of silencing such films, the government celebrated them. When Parasite won the Oscar, even the South Korean president called it the most Korean story. Around this time, a new generation of filmmakers emerged. Known as the 386 generation, they were born in the 1960s, fought for democracy in the 1980s, and entered their 30s in the 1990s. They were the first Koreans allowed to travel abroad freely, to study film overseas, and to return home with new ideas. Directors like Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, and Kim Ki-duk began crafting stories that combined international appeal with deeply Korean themes. Old Boy, The Chaser, Pietà, and I Saw the Devil made global waves. Hollywood and Bollywood both remade Korean films, recognizing their brilliance. But Korean cinema didn't stop at dark thrillers. It expanded into romantic dramas, comedies, and experimental storytelling. Meanwhile, television dramas began crossing borders. The 1997 show What Is Love became the first Korean drama broadcast in China, marking the birth of what would later be called Hallyu, the Korean wave. From there, the wave kept growing. K-dramas like Crash Landing on You, Descendants of the Sun, and Squid Game captured global audiences. What makes these dramas so addictive is their emotional realism. They speak about love, loss, ambition, and struggle in a way that feels deeply human. They are beautifully shot, written with care, and often created by women. An incredible 94% of K-drama screenwriters are female, bringing unique sensitivity and depth to storytelling. By the late 1990s, the K-pop industry was rising alongside cinema and TV. President Kim's reforms allowed Japanese pop music to enter Korea for the first time since the colonial period, inspiring local artists to create their own version K-pop. In 1996, SM Entertainment formed H.O.T., the first modern Korean boy band. Their music, fashion, and choreography thrilled young audiences, selling over 1 million albums. The K-pop idol system, though criticized for its strictness, gave structure and opportunity to thousands of young performers. They were trained for years in singing, dancing, and even media behavior before debuting. Out of this system came global megastars like BTS and Blackpink. These artists became ambassadors of Korean culture. BTS spoke at the United Nations, met President Joe Biden at the White House, and inspired a global fandom known as the Army. Blackpink performed at Coachella and became the most followed girl group in the world. PSY's Gangnam Style broke the internet long before TikTok even existed. And behind all this success was the simple idea that music and storytelling can cross borders, no matter what language you speak. If you've been inspired by how Korea turned its pain into power, don't forget to subscribe. It takes just one click, but it helps me create more stories like this, stories that reveal how nations rise, fall, and rise again. Who knows, maybe one day we'll tell the story of how your country became the next cultural superpower. Today, South Korea's influence goes far beyond entertainment. Its shows bring tourists, its songs fill arenas, and its movies inspire filmmakers from every corner of the world. This cultural dominance, what scholars call soft power, has become one of Korea's greatest strengths. And yet, it all began with a decision that culture matters, that creativity can be an industry, and that stories can change the world. There are so many lessons here for other nations. The first is that monopolies and crony capitalism, like the ones that once plagued South Korea, only hold a nation back. The second is that censorship suffocates creativity. Real progress happens when artists are free to question and reflect society. And finally, government support matters. Great leaders from Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew to Korea's Kim Dae-jung understood that progress requires both freedom and vision. India, for example, is far bigger and more diverse than South Korea. Each of its states has unique languages, stories, and traditions. Imagine a Kumaoni wave, a Kashmiri wave, a Gujarati or Manipuri wave sweeping across the globe. Imagine Haryanvi cinema or Assamese music being celebrated on Netflix or at the Grammys. It's not impossible. It just needs belief, support, and structure, the same ingredients that transformed South Korea from a war-torn nation into the world's cultural heartbeat. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you think your state or country could build its own cultural wave like Korea did? What's the one change that could make it happen? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Because maybe the next global wave will start right from where you are.